Hello and welcome to a brand new episode of the Scared to Dance podcast with me, your host, Paul Richards. Over the course of this series, I'll be talking to some of my favourite people about their musical passions past and present. These include people who have DJed our club night, as well as those who have created our film nights. Today, I'm joined by someone whose voice has come to define a generation of indie music. Matt Berninger, frontman and lyricist of The National. For more than 2 decades, the band have built a body of work that feels timeless, tender, and constantly evolving. From early records like Alligator and The Boxer, to more recent albums, the first 2 pages of Frankenstein and Laugh Track. We discuss Mistaken for Strangers, the 2013 documentary film about The National. Hailed by Michael Moore as one of the best documentaries about a band that I've ever seen, and by Pitchfork as the funniest, most meta-music movie since Spinal Tap, Mistaken for Strangers is a hilarious, unusual, and moving film about 2 brothers. What starts as a rock documentary soon becomes a surprisingly honest portrait of a charged relationship between 2 brothers and the frustration of unfulfilled creative ambitions. So, we were talking a little bit before the show, and I was wondering, when was the last time you saw Mistaken for Strangers?
I watched it about 3 or 4 years ago. I watched it again. I think I was on tour.
Yeah.
And I watched it. I think I was missing Tom, and I watched it, and I was, yeah. And then, yeah, but I hadn't seen it for a long time before that. It had probably been because it's now 11 years old, I think. Yeah, so it was a really, and then watching it just now was also, I was reminded by it all again. So
yeah, what's it like
every
watching
3 years I watch it?
Yeah, what's it like watching it with that distance? Are there bits that you forget or you slightly cringe at, or bits that are kind of funnier that you remember? It's a really funny film.
It's funnier. It's way funnier for me to watch it now than it was then, in a way. But we knew it was. We were really, my wife Corinne and Tom and I and Corinne, mostly Corinne and Tom. Really, when I watch it now again, I see how much Corinne pulled the narrative together, and she was the one who's like, because Tom came on tour and we were filming everything. We were just goofing around for the most part and having a lot of fun. And then everything, with Tom having this other job he was supposed to do, he wasn't doing great. But he was, I did keep him around even after he kind of got fired for a little while and just to keep filming more stuff. And I even after he got fired and went home, I had a feeling he had a good movie in there, even though, and it was really Corinne when she started seeing the footage that he had, where she's like, well, this moment, I mean, like what you drunk on the bus is when Tom is drunk on the bus and filming himself singing to Rob Halford. That was where she's like, now I'm seeing a movie here, and it was really Corinne was like, Tom, the movie is really more. I think it's as much about you as it is about Matt's band, and so she really changed the compass, of what for Tom and for us and for me, and then the band was really happy that it wasn't going to be about the band anymore, kind of in a funny way.
Well, I want to ask about that. What was the original idea? Was the original pitch that he'd come on tour? Because it was the High Violet tour. Was it going to be more of a band documentary of a kind of like fly on the wall,
He needed a job.
The National kind of breaking.
That was it. He needed a job. He needed something to do, and I missed him. I missed him, and we were. I mean, it sounds like we were kind of like estranged brothers or something. We weren't. Like we were. I was really close with him, as a teenager when he was a tiny little kid. We're 9 years different, so so for so long he was my little buddy. He was almost like a pet to me, for when he was a baby. I loved him, and he was like a puppy. He was funny, and then and as he grew up, he became this little sidekick, and then when he becomes a grown man, I think that is when our dynamic had to evolve, right?
Yeah.
Big time. When he was a teenager, and then I moved and I was in New York, and we didn't I never saw him. I really didn't see him when he was in high school very much. I was already in New York by the time he was in high school and everything, and college, and so he had all these things. And there was a good 10 years where we were not estranged by any means, but had not seen each other. So I really missed him. So I said, just come on tour, bring your camera, because he had gone. He'd done a year or two he went to film school in Montana, and had made these movies. And I was always, always telling him to not give up on making art and making movies. And this, I was like, come and make something. Just come and so when he first came, we were just goofing around a lot just in the hotel room. And then we would go out in the city in like Oslo. He's got me doing just telling me to do weird stuff. And he was definitely not like a D.A. Pennebaker filmmaker, and he wasn't a guy who I'd seen a lot of documentaries. So the word documentary to him.
Don't worry.
I mean, yeah. So he didn't. I mean, he didn't go in with much of a plan, and I didn't expect him to actually. Even though I'm yelling at him, this is way later. He's been filming for a long time, and he's asked me questions. And I realized like he's got no. Even at this point, there's no plan for a film.
The Post-it note bit is astonishing.
Yeah.
I kind of, had a panic attack looking at the Post-it note system.
Well, that's when like, that was Corinne was like, and then Corinne started to, he would hand the camera to other people. People would be, the crew would be filming him doing stuff, running around. He was like he was passing around the camera. He was just kind of having fun, but he was working his ass off on the movie. He was working harder trying to make a movie than he was doing the job he was getting paid for, and that is why he got fired. And I couldn't argue with that because we needed somebody doing the role that he really wasn't doing. So and we couldn't afford to pay two people. But I kept him around but I knew that he was going to have something, but we couldn't keep him on tour. But so when he went back, and it was Corinne that was really. She was like, she saw a lot of the stuff we were filming, and she's like, the goofy stuff, and we were messing around and making each other laugh. She's like, it's funny, but you don't have a story. It's like you've got little bits of goofy stuff that is funny to you guys, but out of context, just that stuff it might as well be, this was before Instagram, but it was kind of like we just had these little stupid little bits of content. And but you can't really just make a movie out of just a bunch of little bits of content. You can. That's what he ended up doing, actually. But it was Corinne, my wife, who really was like the last act, you could say, of the movie is she's like this movie is about you trying to make this movie, and even it was Corinne that's like the very ending, like the credit, a film by Tom Berninger. Is a plot point in the movie. It's the moment where Tom, but the movie's not quite over, So she's in editing. It was her editing, and Tom has a very magical way of editing too. So Tom and Corinne in their editing is what I would call the direction of the film, So it's kind of the credit of Tom. A film by Tom Berninger, edited by Tom and Corinne, is sort of is actually part of the narrative of the film.
And how did Tom feel about it when it came out? Because we see him doing the preview screening, showing the band and the crew, and he clearly looks very worried beforehand, and kind of goes wrong.
Well, that was way before he finished it.
How was the brotherly dynamic at that point?
Well, when he was really struggling to finish, and then there's a screening he did. At that point he'd been living with me for a long time, trying to do it, and he had pulled together something that everybody was excited to see what and then there were technical difficulties, if something with the digital file, I don't know what it was in the projector booth, and that was like I was pretty frustrated because Tom can, like I said in one point, Tom's one of these guys, he does like 90% of the job more beautifully than anyone else could, but that last 10%, he somewhere he can't finish the last. And so that was like the failed screening was me again, just like, you work for months and months, but you couldn't take the 2 hours extra to get there early to make sure all the digital stuff, the tech stuff was right. And you can't be mad about that. That happens to everybody all the time. But yeah, that was, it was, there was a lot of genuine, real frustration. And I was nervous. The band was nervous. Everybody was genuinely nervous.
Well, how did the band feel about the film changing from being about the National to more about being about Tom?
First of all, when I told them it was Crin's idea, they're like, that's a great idea. If I told them it was my idea, then I probably would have faced more resistance. When Crin chimes in, everybody definitely listens. But it was all, but they all kind of got it. And because they knew when Tom was interviewing that, like, that they're not in front of Werner Herzog. They're not in front of, the Maisel brothers here. So there was always something a little bit like, what is this going to be? And so in that way, they weren't really nervous or cared. Our management and our, we're like, what are you guys going to put out? And because he wanted to finish a movie and put it into the world, and I wanted him to too. So, but he had support the whole time from the band for sure, and from me, and he was always really supported in it, even though sometimes there was a lot of doubt of whether this should be something or not.
And how many of the pieces in the film were completely natural, or maybe had to be refilmed? Or I'm not saying that they were staged, but you're not always going to get everything in a perfect take.
Yeah. When I watched it, I'm trying to remember. There were things that happened that weren't caught that we did recreate, kind of, or pieced together to we put little bits of there were bits that we wove in there to connect, some connective tissue that hadn't been caught in a verite way. But it's 100%. Nothing that happens in the movie didn't happen. None of the, and I would say none of the. I can't call anything in it scripted at all. Although there were things like, we need this little tiny bit, and we would find a way to get that, So, but it's not a mockumentary. It's not a fake thing. That is Tom. Nobody in there is putting on a character. Tom is more like Tom than he's even presented there, So it's the real McCoy for him for sure. And yeah, so it's I think of it is a pure doc, but I admit that there's some of it but I mean, I know a lot of documentary filmmakers, and I know how much narrative and recreation happens in every doc. You
need knock.
So no, but and I think ultimately at the end, Crin's sensibility, her narrative sensibility, made that film work.
And at the time, were there any plans to do anything else with it? Was there going to be a follow-up, or maybe, something to do with TV, or?
Yes, there have been multiple different sort of, we've been approached to make a TV series. We were cooking that out in LA for a while. And we were, a lot of people were interested in turning it into a narrative series, and so we were working on that for a while. We had meetings with HBO. We went to the Sundance Episodic Lab and did that. Was incredible, and we worked with all these showrunners out there, and trying to work up a pilot and a season for a whatever, like a some cable series, and we pitched to HBO, Netflix, and everybody, and we got close, we got close, and but that didn't happen. But that's still cooking in new versions. There's new, and then There's even been recently people approached us about doing a narrative or recreating the doc as a narrative film or as a as a movie.
Would that be with you guys again, or with actors, or?
Well, that was the thing. I was like, there's no way. I was like, well, what do you mean? Like, because the DNA of like, I was like, I wouldn't ever want to hire like cast it with some like a Tom type character in a me type character in I wouldn't ever want it to be like any national music. So I the thing is like, if the premise and the narrative and the story that happens that was really makes it a great movie. I feel like someone could. I said maybe it's not. It's sisters. I do think that the siblings thing is critical to the story.
Yeah, completely.
So, but it does seem like a pretty hard challenge to turn that into a Hollywood movie. And so I'm interested to see what might develop there. But I'm not leading that. And Tom and I aren't leading that. But there is that kind of thing. But yeah, we're all still very interested, possibly in I don't know, just the Tom and I have so much fun when we're together, and Tom has been filming me doing everything I've been doing since the end of that movie. So we've got 12,
so part 2.
Well, we've got 11 years of more story, Tom's story. Tom's story since the end of the movie. He's had a lot of a serious roller coaster of a 10 years. So have I. And Tom, and a lot of it was Tom just shot like 10 videos for me, in the past 10 years, and there is possibly if Corinne and Tom and I buckled down, we could probably do a pretty honest and genuine, good follow up to that. But it took like 2 years to edit, or felt like I don't know how long. It felt like it was a long. The editing process, is with documentaries. I think it's such a the editing is so that's the storytelling is all the editing and so yeah we're collecting, and we'll see if we make it to the end.
And what did your parents think of the film? I thought it was really sweet that they were willing to be in the film.
My poor sister Rachel was not in it except for the photo, and we've both been. She's held that over us for a long time. When she saw it, but she's lived in Seattle. The next one she'll be in a lot more. But my parents are incredible. They have always encouraged all of us just to do whatever made us happy. That was it. And they believed even when we weren't happy, they're like, you're going to be, like, you will be happy. We won't let you not be happy. And it's true.
Yeah,
they have 3 happy kids. I mean, not always happy, but my parents are the best. They're incredible. Yeah.
Just before I came on stage, I said, "Oh, that's amazing! Werner Herzog's in the film, who is my favorite film director."
Yeah.
And you promised me to tell me the story behind it.
Oh, sorry. The Werner Herzog thing, that was all real. The cast of Lost couldn't get in. Werner and his wife, his partner, they couldn't get in, but they got in and they saw the show. But before, Werner Herzog was one of my favorite filmmakers too. And at the time, there was we were talking about maybe he wanted to do a video, but he wanted to shoot us on the edge of a live volcano. It was really true. He had it all planned out, and I think he thought we had like a couple $100,000 for a video budget. He wasn't sure. And we were like, we can't go to a volcano. And anywhere, and so we never did do a video with Werner. But I had a great dinner with him, and we had. I remember the band and Werner and his wife and the bunch of the Lost cast members all had like we were 10 of us around a big table at a Japanese restaurant, and I remember they did the huge platter, 25-person platter of sushi all along the middle. And so there was all this and I was kind of too nervous to eat because it was about an hour and a half before the show, and I can never eat before the show. And so there's all this kind of warming sushi, over the course of this long dinner. And Werner was talking to everybody. He was right across from me, and he was in a phase where he was very obsessed with serial killers. So he was talking about all John Wayne Gacy and all these and he was just into the details of all these serial killers. Well, there's all this sort of warming sushi in front of us, and then. I'm sorry, I forget his partner's name, and she was right next to me, and she was talking to me about all her photography, and she does all her photography is fetuses in jars from around the world. I mean, she does a lot of beautiful, amazing things, but so she was showing me all these photos of fetuses in jars, and from science labs and hospitals, old ones, that have been in jars for 100 years or something. So. I remember just all this sushi, Werner talking about serial killers, and then all these fetuses in jars. Yeah, it was one of those dinners that I'll never forget.
One of those ones.
But he's so funny and so sweet, and so is she. And that was a fun night, even though it looked like a disaster.
Thanks to Matt Berninger from The National for joining us at Picturehouse Central to discuss Mistaken for Strangers. Be sure to check out his latest solo album, Get Sunk, which is one of my favourite releases of 2025. If you like what you've heard, be sure to subscribe wherever you get your podcasts and leave us a review. Next week, I'll be joined by one of my favourite human beings, John Grant. We discuss his musical influences, his recent projects, including performing in an adaptation of A Single Man at the Royal Opera House, his love of cinema, and much more. This podcast was produced at Third Floor Recording.